Hey, what's going on, everyone? My name is Alex. Welcome back to avchesslab. The French defense is such a bad opening that I wanted to show you with some of my own games how to crush it once and for all, and we're starting right now. Okay, so let me show you how to destroy the French defense. We have e4, e6. What an ugly move to see. If you're a French defense player, do yourself a favor and invest your time into learning something else like the Caro-Can or Sicilian defense. You will do much better with them. And here I played g3. I wanted to put my bishop on g2 and control the h1 a8 diagonal. The more common way to play in this position is to go for d4, put the bishop on d3, and attack the square on h7. This is more common since the king usually castles kingside in the French defense anyway. But during this time in my chess development, I used to love playing sidelines. My opponent here continued with the move d5, and I went ahead and I played bishop to g2, protecting my pawn on e4, and my opponent captured on e4. The idea is to develop with tempo. After bishop takes on e4, he will go knight to f6, developing the knight with tempo, and then I will have to retreat my bishop back to g2. But instead, I play this move, knight to c3. Now I'm hitting the pawn twice with my knight and bishop, and I'm not allowing him to develop knight to f6 with tempo. Of course, my opponent plays knight to f6 anyways, but why not the move f5? f5, trying to keep the pawn. Then I was going to play f3, pawn takes on f3, knight takes on f3, and this is the Tartakower's gambit, and honestly, no one in their right mind will play this with black. White has 1, 2, 3 pieces developed, is ready to go kingside castle, play d4, controlling the square on e5 that a knight can jump there. If you look at black's position, none of his pieces in the back rank are developed. By playing this move to f5, he has weakened squares like g5, e5, not to mention the square on f7 is very juicy and we will be able to have a very nice game from here. Instead, coming back to the game with after knight to f6, here I went knight takes on e4, my opponent captured on e4, and he told me after the game in the postmortem that he wanted to trade some pieces, and he wanted that after bishop takes on e4 to go knight d7, knight f6, and hit my bishop with tempo. But if you want to win with the French defense, you have to keep the tension. So playing, instead of knight takes e4, playing some bishop e7, castling, keeping the tension is a lot better way to go. Instead, after knight takes on e4, I went ahead and I captured with my bishop. There's nothing else to do. My opponent continued with his plan, knight to d7, and here I played knight to e2. My opponent continued knight to f6. I retreated my bishop to g2, and he went e5. A very logical move. It puts a pawn in the center of the board, it controls both d4 and f4, and also allows the bishop from c8 to move. Pro tip for you guys. One of the reasons that French defense is a bad opening is that this bishop that's on c8 usually remains behind the pawn chain, and in most endgames, it ends up playing against a very good knight. Alright, so moving back into the game, here I went ahead and I castled kingside. I took some time on this move. I wanted to play the move d4 and hoping that after pawn takes, knight takes, I was going to have a centralized knight on the board, and you know that a centralized knight is an octopus knight. But here I started sensing very bad energy coming at me. Had I played d4, pawn takes d4, knight takes d4, the bishop comes to c5 with tempo, hitting my knight, and if my knight retreats to b3 for example, then he has queen takes first, king takes, and he wins a pawn on f2. So I wasn't very happy with this, so I ended up castling instead. Here my opponent continued with c6, d4 by me this time. Now bishop c5 no longer comes with tempo since I have an intermediate rook to e1 check, and his king will be in a lot of trouble. He went e takes on d4, I capture with my knight, and here bishop to e7. In this position, I spent a long time thinking. I felt my position was better, but I needed to find a place for my c1 bishop to move to. I wanted to play rook e1, b3, and bishop a3 in one go, but of course, this is not possible in chess. You cannot make 3 moves in a row. So instead, I had to settle for the move b3. With this move, I'm staying very flexible. Now, I have ideas of playing bishop to a3 in conjunction with with rook to e1, sorry, but also I'm also putting my bishop on b2 from where it would be very well placed in this diagonal, attacking the king. And if I can get some knight to f5 in the right moment, then both my knight and bishop will be hitting the square on g7. My opponent here castle, he went kingside castle. I continue with bishop to b2 and queen to a5. Here, I again had to pause as I was trying to understand this move. And after a few minutes thinking, I understood my opponent wanted to trade my very powerful bishop on b2 with this move bishop to a3. And once that bishop landed there, I was going to force to trade since, for example, if I make any other move like rook to e1 attacking the bishop here, he would have gone bishop to a3. If I don't want to trade bishop, I would have to go bishop here, but then he goes bishop b4, and notice that I cannot move my light square bishop back to b2 because he takes my rook on e1. So once I had understood this, after queen to a5, I simply played this very strong move a3, and now I'm completely stopping the bishop from coming there, but also from coming to b4 in some situations. Here my opponent went for bishop to g4, attacking my queen. And I went queen to e1. I did not want to trade queens, but the alternative was to play queen to d3. But after rook to a to d8, I did not like where this was going. My opponent is ready to play c5, win my knight on d4. There's just way too many threats here, so instead I decided to go for queen to e1 and offer a queen trade. My opponent here went queen to c7. I thought this move was a complete blunder. Now I'm able to put a lot of pressure risk-free. Had he gone for queen takes on e1 though, I was planning to go rook f takes on e1, rook a e8 protecting the bishop on e7, h3 attacking the bishop retreats to c8, rook a to d1 centralizing my other rook. And honestly, I love my position here, but I don't think I could make much more progress than this, and black should be able to hold this. Instead, after queen to c7, I felt I could put a lot of pressure for free here. I played this move h3, and I was very proud of this move. This bishop is controlling this square on f5, and I really want to put my knight there, as I mentioned earlier. From f5, my knight not only puts pressure on the bishop on e7, but also attacks a square on g7. And if this bishop ever moves, once this knight lands on f5, then I could just go ahead and capture the knight on f6, ruining the pawn structure for black. So if this bishop from g4 wanted to keep control of the f5 square, he had to retreat with bishop to c8. And here I played queen to c3. At the moment I played this move, I was not sure if it was strong or not, but as you will see, it had a lot of punch to it. My opponent continued with knight to e8, a prophylaxis against any mate threats on g7, and also opening up the f6 square for the bishop to go there. I anticipated this move, and of course I played this a4 move. My opponent continues with bishop to f6, and my idea now, bishop to a3. The rook on f8 does not have any good squares to go to, and here my opponent played knight to d6. If instead of knight d6, if my opponent had gone for bishop to e7 instead, protecting the rook, I was going to hit him with knight to b5, pawn takes on b5, queen takes queen, knight takes, bishop takes on e7, the rook goes to e8, and here I was going to go bishop to d6, attacking the knight. When the knight moves, I was going to take this pawn, I was going to be up a pawn and the bishop pair, a very easy winning position. Instead, my opponent goes knight to d6, and here I already sensed I was completely winning. Black is all tied up everywhere, I just needed to apply more pressure. So I found this very nice move, queen to c5. Attacking the knight on d6, taking advantage that it cannot move because of this nasty queen takes on f8 checkmate. My opponent gets out of the pin, plays rook to d8, and here I continue to apply pressure with rook a to d1, with the nasty threat again of going knight to b5, winning a piece, since we will be attacking the queen and attacking the knight. My opponent here played bishop to e7, and this move loses on the spot. Pause the video and see if you can find the winning continuation for white. Alright, if you found knight to b5, congratulations. In this position, my opponent resigned in view of knight takes on b5, we take on e7, the queen takes, bishop takes, rook captures on d1, we capture the rook, and notice something here, we're threatening checkmate on d8, we're also hitting the knight, there's no way for black to prevent losing a piece, so my opponent called it quits here. Hope you guys enjoyed this 22 move masterpiece. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, stay safe, have a great day, and show respect to your opponent. See you next time.